Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tech Bros podcast with myself, Egerton, and
And myself, Raj. Hello.
how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Do you feel perhaps refreshed and maybe that it was good to have a break from social media such as Facebook?
No, I didn't appreciate that.
Well, spoilers. That's what we're talking about today.
That was the worst 6 to 7 hours of my life.
How did you cope during the time? What did you do?
Well, you know what? The initial thing was I thought it was just my internet playing up because that's what usually happens. My internet plays up, and then I think at the time of when it happens, my WhatsApp was just saying connecting, connecting, connecting. So I turned off my Wi-Fi to my data, and it was still saying connecting. And then I tried sending a message, and then it brought up the clock. So I was like, "What's going on?"
I actually tried to send a message in a group chat that you're in, and I said, "Hey, shall we meet at 6?" I sent that at about 5. It got to 6, and it was still had the clock symbol on it.
Pending, pending with a capital P.
So then I had to
But
delete it because then okay, it's just not going to send in a reasonable time frame, and then by the time it sends, it's going to be irrelevant because
yeah, exactly,
it's not going to work
exactly.
otherwise. But yes. So today we're talking about the outage that caused Facebook and also other services that they have, such as Instagram and WhatsApp,
What's up?
as well as we've mentioned, that caused them to go down for 6 hours on Monday.
Yeah, the longest outage that those services have had for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about how uh, I mean, so this is anecdotal, but just how ingrained and how important those apps are. Like a lot of people, when those apps went down, they immediately just thought, well, the internet's gone down because a lot of what they do on the internet is, Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's like that might also be like, primarily what they access. And so it kind of is very important. Well, I don't know about important, but it certainly is a big part of the internet. And so people just assumed, oh, the internet must be down if those apps aren't working.
Yeah, exactly. No, those 6 hours
So
brought
yeah.
calamity, absolute calamity and carnage.
And then everyone just went to Twitter just to complain because Twitter was still up.
Twitter, Twitter had a field day. Like
Like, excellent.
their tweets were so funny. Like Twitter, spud, spud.
So yeah, we
Oh,
should so we should say that for those who weren't aware, for 6 hours on Monday, uh, basically no one could access Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. So that's all around about 3 billion users of Facebook. If you think about how astronomically large that is, all of
yeah,
them can access these functions for about 6 hours. And in doing so, it cost Facebook quite a lot of money.
a hell lot of money. And now that we are naming statistics, here's a statistic for you. So for every minute that Facebook is actually down, it costs the company $222,000 a minute. That is a lot of money to lose. Like Zuck, yeah. And I forgot his name already. Zuckerberg.
Zuckerberg, yeah.
Zuckerberg lost so much money that day. Like it was. Could you imagine having money just in just in instance? being wiped from, your net value because of an outage. It is pretty serious.
We should also say that that because of the outage, Facebook's stock fell by 4.9%, which means
Yes, it
that
did.
they lost a market cap of $47.3 billion in terms of their value as a company. So it kind of gives you a sense as to when it comes to these apps, in terms of how them always being online is just a constant sort of churn of money, essentially.
Yeah.
And obviously, they obviously have to pay, all of their employees, and their employees, especially if their developers, probably earn, a pretty good amount of money. But that's, it all goes towards that, but also goes towards making them, one of the most, just a monopoly in terms of their market value.
hmm It's crazy, absolutely crazy. And the last time that Facebook had such disruption like this, it's not even been like 5 years. The last disruption of near about this value was back in 2019.
Yeah, and we should say at this point that one of the things that people assumed when the outage was happening, that it was a malicious attack.
Yes.
That it would be, for example, a result of a DDoS attack or a distributed denial of service attack, which is where basically some malicious actor bombards a server with loads and loads of just nonsense requests, essentially. So, for example, resolving a name or like a text that's just really long, that just takes a long time to process. And as a result, it just takes up all of the server capacity just trying to resolve that request.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of an example of a sort of malicious attack that can cause this sort of thing. But this was not actually a malicious attack, or at least that's what's being reported at the moment, and that's what's been confirmed by Facebook themselves, is that this was a problem with their BGP, or their Border Gateway Protocol. And this basically meant that their DNS servers, or domain name system, couldn't actually resolve they essentially, it sounds funny to say, they kind of removed themselves from the internet, essentially,
Basically.
through their own sort of, when they were making a sort of configuration change on their end. They essentially made it so that when you type in, for example, facebook.com, usually that would get resolved to an IP address that's then you then retrieve the relevant web page. But
Yeah.
in this case, it meant that because the DNS servers were not working properly, that name facebook.com did not resolve to an IP address, and so it couldn't find the web page, essentially.
hmm And also, people thought that this was linked to the whistleblower in Facebook as well, because I think that the whistleblower kind of came forward the day before this all happened.
Yep.
So people were thinking that it was something linked to this, but again, as Facebook confirmed, it wasn't.
Yeah. So this was Frances Hogan, who was a former product manager on Facebook's civic integrity team. And she basically was behind a number of sort of internal documents that the Wall Street Journal reported on, called the Facebook files. And she's now sort of come out and become, public now. And has actually sort of talked about how, in her view, like, Facebook is, not good for children and that sort of thing. And, if you listen to my episode on the social dilemma, you'll know that we've sort of talked about this before on the podcast. So obviously the timing about it, just because it was the day after that, was, very suspect for people. They thought, oh, it must be some kind of attack. Although there have been reports, CNBC reports that there was an employee who said that there were those within Facebook who said it was karma for the whistleblower. That in a way, like, there was a feeling among some of the employees that this is kind of, they deserved it almost, just based on kind of the whistleblower coming out and the timing of that. So
Yeah.
that's pretty funny.
mm, mm. Yeah. And I'm just having a look and some more statistics that we've got. Duh, 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 duh. Actually, not a statistic per se, but it was also kind of alleged that all the servers, Facebook servers in California, had to be manually reset by engineers. Could you imagine how many servers they've got and how many of them have to be manually reset by engineers? No wonder it took 6 hours.
And we also, it's not, and so when we say manual reset, what's also coming out now is we're receiving reports that the system was tied to the access system for employees into the Facebook building, which meant that Facebook employees could not access the building and could access, the server room in order to actually diagnose the error. And so
Big mistake.
there's been reports now of employees having to use an axle grinder in order to actually get into the room, that they had to break the door open.
Big mistake. Never have that on the same server as everything else. Because when that goes down, that's it. You're done. You're done for.
I mean, this is kind of what, it's why you don't have a single point of failure. It's sort of one of the things in computer science, and the idea that there's one particular point in which if something breaks, then everything around it breaks as well.
Yeah.
Which is very surprising. I think it's taught people a lot about how Facebook works, in terms of the back end of it, but also how they're organized. You would think that some of these things, when they have obviously very talented engineering teams there that can work on actually making a solution that's a lot more robust and resilient to these sorts of errors. But the fact that we've seen that clearly the system is not robust on the back end at all shows that, for all of the money that Facebook has and all of the personnel and all the developers that they have, they focus on more, on other features such as advertising and making maybe changes to the front end rather than actually fixing some of the problems that exist in the back end.
Yeah.
As we've now seen. So it definitely is food for thought in terms of how Facebook is actually working.
Exactly. I had something as a thought, and then now that thought is actually gone. I think that yeah, that thought was actually gone. What a shame. It'll probably come back to me. But do you have anything else on Facebook?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of things that are sort of coming out on it. So there was one of the things that also that like some of these problems have also been confounded by the fact that because of traffic in California, engineers couldn't actually get back to the office quickly enough as well, because California traffic is notoriously very bad.
It's notoriously very bad. Yeah.
So it's really sort of interesting, kind of stories that we're kind of getting from employees now about what actually happened at the point at which the outage was reported, and essentially kind of how they were going about actually fixing it. And I think just the fact that it's so, I don't know, it doesn't seem necessarily like it's very well run when we need like an axle grinder just to get in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's pretty wild.
Well, I'm sure that Facebook will definitely learn from their mistakes on this one, and hopefully ensure that this sort of incident doesn't happen again. But we all know that within technology, that for something not to happen again is, can't really say it's not going to happen again because it may just happen again. So let's hope that Facebook puts preventive measures in to try and prevent something from this happening again. That's it.
Yeah. If anyone wants to read about this more, there is a blog post by the Facebook engineering team, and basically it gives some more details. So if you look up the Facebook engineering blog, they have a blog, and they essentially talked about the outage and has some more sort of technical details on what went wrong. It doesn't cover some of the other things, such as people not being able to get inside the building. So, because it's from Facebook themselves, they're probably trying to make it sound less bad than it was.
Yeah.
So bear that in mind when you're reading it, but it gives you a good primer on what happened.
Yeah.
Did you manage to get your fort back?
No, it's gone. But I think it was along the lines of them having to scramble back to try and resolve this, because I did see that. But no, I don't think it came back.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I think definitely like the fact that it was 6 hours, which is a pretty sizable outage.
Yeah.
This wasn't something where it was very quick. I expected when the outage was being reported that, okay, it'll be fixed within like an hour, maybe.
Yeah.
But the fact they went on for 6 hours maybe shows that there were definitely a lot of issues and barriers in terms of actually fixing it,
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that if it's like an accidental change, and this is something to a server configuration, that maybe takes you very little time. You just type a line in a server configuration, for example.
Yeah.
And then it becomes something where you're like locked out of the server, and then it takes a long time to fix. So small changes can have large consequences. And I've sometimes had to learn that the hard way.
Oh yeah, same here. Okay, well, that's all we have on Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram outage. So yeah, I've been Egerton.
I've been Raj,
And Raj has been Raj.
as usual.
And yes, and we hope that you join us for our next episode. Apart from
Bye.
that, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.